So we're now moving on to our keynote presentation today. Delighted to have with us Rikard Kjellberg. Rikard is COO of B-Yond, and Rikard is talking to us today about next generation automation, agile and dynamic networks as a service. Rikard, over to you.
Mark, thank you for that introduction. So B-Yond delivers AI-powered network automation solutions for communication service providers worldwide. Today, we're going to talk about network as a service. I recently came across a quote by Charles Darwin that says, "It is not the strongest who survives, it is the one who's the most adaptable to change." And I think this sums up last year quite nicely. If you look at it from a business perspective, you had largely three categories of businesses. You had those who died, you had those who thrived, and you had those who survived. In the category of those who died, the common denominator was largely a completely incompatible business model. You saw brick and mortar retailers, and you saw a lot of family-owned businesses, unfortunately, perish. Then in the category of those who thrived, these companies already had a business model that turned out to be perfectly aligned with the pandemic situation that we had. And these companies were not only thriving, they were capitalizing on the pandemic. So we have Amazon, Netflix, Google, Instacart, and others right there. And then we have this large category in the middle, those who survived. And this is where I feel that the communication service provider category sits today. So on one hand, it was really impressive to see how quickly the CSPs adapted to the onslaught of communication and the changing communication patterns. However, the business models remained the same, and as evidenced by now the finance reporting coming in, and you're seeing declines in revenue from anywhere between 2 and 10%, at least here in the North America. So it's interesting then to see what are corporate boards focusing on going forward. And here we have Gartner, who've done some research here, and they've talked to corporate boards, and initiatives for 2021 fall into one of 5 categories. They're all overlapping and interrelating, starting with the transformation of business models, as we mentioned, making them more aligned with the current situation and the post-pandemic future as best we know it. Then to fund that, we have to make investments. So what investments do we want to make to do that transformation? Of course, investments need cash. So cost optimization is another category that is top of mind. And of course, achieving operational excellence is also important in order to be able to do these cost optimizations. Finally, whatever portfolio of initiatives you have as a company, a lot of corporations look at how can we accelerate the path to the desired end state. Now, this is across the board for many different industries. How does that apply to CSP? Well, at B-Yond, here's what we see. We see a lot of focus on the investment side and the cost optimization side. And this was going on before the pandemic as well. So on the investment side, 5G has been a big investment area for most CSPs for quite a while, and that kept going last year at a same pace pretty much. Cost optimization were also a big top of mind even before the pandemic, and if anything, that accelerated last year. And here we saw reduction in force, we saw outsourcing and offshoring to lower cost locations. The other 3 areas, there were some spot initiatives, but nothing that flow through the whole organizations as we saw it. So these are all about revenue, scale, and being agile. Agile for us means everything. It's people and process, technology, and the business. So what's interesting is that the CSP category is standing in front of a new wave of innovation and development. So it's really exciting. And one sign of that is that we have some new players entering this space. So first, we have internet companies. They're acquiring VNF technology and developing technology, such as Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Oracle, and they're starting to partner with incumbent players right now. We also have some greenfield players entering into the space, Rakuten and Dish as example. The common denominator for these 2 categories is that they already have scale, they're agile, and they have different business models than we're used to. Now, it's not like the incumbents aren't doing anything, they are. So we mentioned 5G, which is largely a software-defined architecture. We also see technology disaggregation. O-RAN is an example of that. This is where we take a vertically integrated technology stack from a particular vendor, and we turn it into horizontal layers of functionality with well-defined and published interfaces. And the idea here is to reduce vendor lock-in and create more of a level playing field for the CSP. IoT has been going on for years and it continues to go on. We see more devices, more third-party applications, and with that, more complexity entering into the network. So another way to look at it is, the CSP network is starting to look like a cloud. The hardware is being commoditized because the infrastructure and the network functions are being virtualized. We see the capability of introducing software-based isolation, both for the users as well as for the applications through network slicing, and standard APIs are emerging through the disaggregation efforts. So these are all prerequisites for scale and agility. So what are we waiting for? Well, one more component here is AI. AI is a key ingredient for scale. What's going to happen, what's going to have to happen to leverage the cloud model is that the current operational models have to evolve towards web scale. What is web scale? Well, one KPI on this is the engineer to server ratio. So if you say in the CSP case, what is my engineer to network device ratio? That ratio has to increase about 20 times. Web scale models are heavy on AI support automation. We know that from Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and others. The good news here is 63% of telcos are already making investment in AI. However, they're largely focused on marketing side and customer support, speeding up ticket resolution, etc. And not that much focus on the operational side. We'll get to that shortly. By 2025, the worldwide telco investment looks to hit $36 billion. The software part of that alone will be around $11 billion. That is a 35 times increase over today. So the CSP category could become the largest user of AI in the world. Webscale is simply not optional unless you want to maintain the same static model that we had before. So the operation models need to keep up with software-defined API-controlled network. So operational excellence becomes key, and that is all about achieving scale. And this is really where we feel the big and the quick wins reside. So AI-powered automation will be required to augment the existing network operations model. The good news is that you can achieve this in a non-disruptive way. Just to give you an example, you can introduce AI automation to complement and contribute to the current processes you have by injecting, for example, actionable insights into your support process and speeding up resolution of issues. And you can also automate the corrective action in the network itself. This is called closed loop automation. This is a process. It's going to take time and many iterations, but you can achieve these quick wins on an iterative basis. So where does this leave business transformation? Well, with software-defined infrastructure and operations at web scale, you can actually offer up your network as a service or a platform, if you like. And this will enable you to create a value-added ecosystem of partners that drive rapid innovation and business collaboration, resulting in new revenue streams for the CSP. So at B-Yond, we believe in this co-innovation model where the CSP and vendors are partners. So AI's role in network operations is across the board. Let's first start with the objective. The objective of introducing AI is to protect the quality of experience for your users while being able to expose your network as a service. So think of it as a technology lifecycle similar to software where you have continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD, and extend that into production. In the pre-production side, we apply it to the testing and validation for network services and other third-party workloads, dealing with the data that comes out of the testing and apply AI models, machine learning models to that. On the production side, we extend it to anomaly detection, triage and root cause, and remediation processes. AI also allows you to free up your human capital to do more innovation and compete with your other friends in the industry. So by offering up the network as a platform to enable third parties to add value to your network, you create the opportunity to co-innovate with partners, and this generates new revenue streams. For example, you can implement revenue share models with your partners. So going forward, we really believe that CSP can play a key role as an innovator in your industry by focusing on the operational excellence and scale and enabling these new and aligned revenue streams. These are great times and exciting times ahead. Thank you very much.
Rikard, thank you so much for talking about such a complex subject with such simplicity and clarity. It was is what's needed, so it's great. So we have a few minutes to talk through this, and I don't think any of us doubt that there's massive potential for AI in the telecoms business, which is so operational. And as you said before, most of the focus until now has been on the customer experience side of things. Not a huge amount of progress so far in operations, even though I know that my colleague Aaron in TM Forum, he runs the AI Ops collaboration team, and it's probably the biggest collaboration project we have today in TM Forum. So there's a huge amount of interest in that space. But my feeling is that one of the reasons why there's so much interest in the space is because the how-to is just so challenging. It's so difficult. And, so I guess in terms of how you address this, do you address opportunities in operations on an incremental, pragmatic basis? Or do you need to start with bigger visions and pictures about what you want to achieve? I think you're on mute, Rikard. You can just...
Yeah, I'm muted right now.
There you go. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about this. And so funny enough, like a lot of things in the CSP space, it's actually more of a people and process challenge than a technology challenge. So while I think at the C level it's great to have a grand vision for machine learning and AI, at the working level, it's really important to take it in incremental steps. So we often talk to our partners and customers about thinking big, starting small, and running fast. And what that means is to develop a roadmap where you start with not the big rocks, not the massive changes, but the quick wins. It's to get support and get the people and processes to follow and eventually transform. You have to very quickly get wins that deliver value to everybody in the organization. So that roadmap and iterative thinking about the next win, etc. It's like a lot of mountaineers, etc., who are climbing mountains. They just look at the next mile or the next hump in the terrain and go from there.
Thanks, that's great. And in terms of thinking big, what does that thinking big look like? What defines the thinking big?
Thinking big means that you transform your business model. For example, that would be a think big item. Or you want to achieve a fundamentally different operational model. Like for today, sad to say, operations today is largely a continuous emergency service.
Yeah,
we have a knock, we look at screens, we look at device failures. So shifting the focus from the failing devices to how their customers are impacted, and focusing on that's really a fundamental shift in thinking. It sounds benign, but it really isn't.
And in terms of foundational capabilities, the other big program that my colleague Aaron is running is around data governance, and that seems to have really risen in prominence, in the last, probably the last 12 months actually. And
Yeah.
to what extent do you need to? Do you need to be putting together and implementing a governance strategy, and simultaneously you're sort of deploying maybe those first AI capabilities on small scale requirements? Is that how you sequence?
Well, data governance is key, and data governance is really about, things swing back and forth a lot. So right now there's a lot of focus on data security, data leaks, etc. So data governance is about taking a second look at how do we manage our data in the most pragmatic way while protecting the data that is truly sensitive to us and to our customers. Once you have that in place, making as much data available as possible for use by machine learning models is going to have to be key. But again, I think the industry will struggle a while in terms of making the right data available without unnecessary constraints.
Yeah, and we have been talking about how to better leverage data for how long, Rikard? Probably for 10 years. Well, and in terms of where we are at today, I always ask people this question, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, which is that we're just starting out, and 10 is, we're on a great strategy and we haven't solved anything yet, but we absolutely know what our data strategy is, and we're leveraging it properly. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are we today? The figure I often get back is about a 4. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I was going to say, before you said 4, I was going to say maybe a 3. So where we are today and the excitement around AI is not because AI is new. AI has been around for decades. The data has been around for decades. What's changed now is that we have the compute and storage power to truly mine that data. That wasn't there before. Yeah. So we're at the critical juncture there.
And I've got a question actually coming in, but before I take that question, I just want to ask you, going back to the how, is it clear to you or to the operators you speak to about how much expertise and capability they need in-house and how much they work with partners?
Yeah, so I think it's very important that larger telcos, that they have a data science team, because they know their data better than anybody else. Now, in terms of industrializing that AI work, which is largely research, that's where partners and like B-Yond can come in and help and make that a production value as well. You need the platforms, you need the capabilities to make sure it's running consistently with the right quality and that it's not disruptive in unintended ways.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions here. One from Rodrigo at BW Tech. How much of the automation strategies are we able to migrate from previous techs to 5G? Considering it came with so much change to the network architecture, I wonder if it's better to start from scratch when automating 5G networks.
It's a difficult question. I think there are many different approaches. We more or less look at analogies when we move into 5G. Like, as I mentioned, 5G is a software-defined architecture. It feels like a cloud, looks like a cloud. It has more complexity because it's got more different types of functions. But that mindset and that thinking, I think, is key. So the sort of continuous integration, continuous testing, and continuous validation model is 100% applicable here. We can actually implement it in parallel to the current existing operational processes and start to introduce the value of that parallel process into the existing process, and then over time transform. And that's the approach that we believe in. Also, I've been thinking about standardizations. There's a lot of standardization going on. Whether AI, ML will have to be standardized, as a technology stack or not, I think is left to be seen. I do believe that the interface.
It's a big question, though, isn't it? It's a very big question.
It is. It's obvious to me, I think, that the interfaces to the data lakes, the sort of telco data lakes, etc., should be standardized. And then what? We'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah. Thanks. And one last question here. So, question from Harjot. Could you elaborate a bit more on the people and process challenge? Is it more legacy-based thinking that hinders, or more lack of short-term or long-term clarity on end state?
No, I think it's largely fear. You have to manage the fear you have in the organization. These are huge organizations. And one of the biggest mistakes made by the leadership is that they think that, let's say, becoming more agile means that to reorganize. Actually not. You should adopt a DevOps approach. A DevOps approach is a mindset and a process. It's not a reorganization. And that process requires cross-functional collaboration, and that's where the mindset comes in. So working with the teams of changing the way they look at accountability, ownership, and empowerment is really, really important. These are soft issues, and only practice training and creating an environment where you celebrate failure will you actually be able to move the people.
Yeah. Okay, that I love the celebrating failure, and I still don't think we're quite there yet, but maybe we're making progress. But Rikard, that was terrific. So thanks for speaking so clearly. Thanks for your vision. Really enjoyed the time speaking with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you.